quiet, set, go.
Even though agriculture is central to India's economy and culture, the issue of food waste is not only costing the government thousands, but also depriving Indian citizens of essential food and nutrients. About 40% of India's fruits and vegetables were wasted last year, which accounts for $8.3 billion according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization.
Post-harvest losses amount to 20 to 35% of food produced out of about 250 million tons of food produced each year. About 65% of the Indian population is involved in agriculture, so food waste not only affects the small farmers and the poor, but also the upper levels of society. Food waste also has many detrimental effects on health.
Food waste is one contributing factor to malnourishment. About half of India's children under the age of 5 are malnourished, and about 20% are acute malnourished, which means they will physically wasted away. Malnourishment has serious consequences on children's health, such as compromised immune system, negatively affected brain development, stunted growth, and nutrient deficiency.
Environmental factors also affect the food waste issue. Insufficient roads and railings makes it difficult to transport the food from the small farms to the more populous areas. About 42.65% of Indian roads are unpaved and thus are unsuitable for vehicle traffic. Additionally, there's no organization nor single policy among the companies tasked with repairing the roads, so highway development is lacking.
The second factor affecting food waste is scientific. The lack of proper cold storage facilities in the food creates tons of spoiled produce. India has only about 6,300 cold storage facilities spread irregularly across the country. In order to maximize food production and minimize waste, India would need almost twice as many food storage facilities, about 61 million metric tons of storage capacity.
India is struggling to provide its facilities for several reasons. First, the price of land, electrical power, and initial building costs for a cold storage facility are simply too large for the Indian government to be able to provide. Additionally, different foods require different temperatures for storing, so only one type of food, usually potatoes, is stored in the cold storage, which is inefficient.
About 40% of food waste occurs between picking and packaging. The other 60% occurs between transportation. This means the lack of cold storage for foods is a huge contributing factor for the food waste in India. India has some facilities that are spread irregularly and severely lacking.
The last contributing political factor to food waste is government corruption. The Indian government has programs that are supposed to distribute grains to millions of people, but the shopkeepers tasked with distributing the grains only give out some of it and keep the rest to sell on the black market.
The shopkeepers blame the increase of prices and complicated rules on the government. The food waste causes an increase in prices, but if farmers produce too much food to combat the prices, they are ordered to let some food rot in order to keep prices stable. This is a dangerous cycle and harms everybody.
There are several solutions that the Indian government must undertake in order to fix the food waste issue. They need to improve their infrastructure, their cold storage facilities, and their corruption. Outside companies will provide essential help, but first the Indian government must cleanse and organize itself.
In order to fix the crumbling roads and provide better transportation, the government must be willing to rely on third-party providers to know how to bring the infrastructure. To help with costs, outside companies can invest in the infrastructure, but government must first create a uniform tax policy across all Indian states to lessen confusion.
There are thousands of Indians who rely on government-distributed subsidies such as wheat, rice, and sugar to prevent starvation. However, the amount of grain distributed equals only about 1 kilogram per person per month, which is nowhere near enough. This is due to archaic rules and deep-seated corruption in the government.
In some cases, farmers are commanded to let their fields rot in order to fix the pricing of produce. It would be difficult for the government to get rid of these deep roots of corruption, but control of the food distribution must be shifted to a federal level in order to create a uniform and organized policy. Third-party organizations may be able to shoulder the role of food distribution with less corruption, but the government needs to organize itself first.
Not only does India need more than double the amount of existing cold storage, they need to adopt new technologies as well. Multi-colony storage has separate chambers, so different foods can be stored at different temperatures. Controlled atmosphere storage controls the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the air to increase the shelf life of the produce.
Electronic controllers can be used to regulate the temperature in cold storage and reduce mistakes caused by human inaccuracy or inattention. More cold storage and better technology within the cold storage is key to reducing food waste. Cold storage is expensive, but the government has exempted air conditioning and refrigerator panels from taxes, which is a step in the right direction.
This issue of food waste must be solved immediately. India is a major producer of mangoes, bananas, apples, and guava, second to China. India produces about 44 million tons of fruit and about 87.53 million tons of vegetables each year. But even with all this food, Indian citizens are still grappling with starvation every single day.
360 million people live under the poverty line in India. The Indian states of Bihar, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh are worse than the national average in all nutrition indicators, including height, weight, and mortality rate for children under 5 years old.
In the lowest caste and tribal populations, the under 5 mortality rate is 113 per 1,000 births. A study showed that 35.6% of Indian women and about 34.2% of Indian men have a body mass index or BMI of less than about 18.5, which is considered a healthy weight for someone's size. A BMI of less than 16.9 is considered actually starving, and about 42% of Indian children are underweight.
Despite its large agriculture economy, India ranks 67 out of 81 on the Global Hunger Index, and 200 million Indian citizens are food insecure. But even though so many people are starving, it's hard to classify deaths from starvation versus deaths from diseases because diseases are so prevalent in Indian villages. The Indian government does not want to acknowledge the starvation rate, but it exists and must be addressed.
Food waste in India is caused by archaic rules, inadequate roads, and a lack of necessary cold storage. It is the Indian government's, and some third-party organizations if necessary, responsibility to create better infrastructure, invest in more cold storage, and decrease corruption. This issue needs to be resolved because not only are Indian citizens starving, but they are consuming rotten fruits and vegetables, which is dangerous for their health.
Maria, let's start with you. What additional questions emerged as you were researching this? So if you had like more time, what kind of things would you look at?
I think we would kind of, if we had more time, we'd probably go back and like research more of the laws that are actually already in place for like the transportation and how the government is like controlling the food waste already.
Okay. Francie, you talked about how potentially a third party of some sort could get involved in your solution or the Indian government. Which are you more confident would be successful and why, a third party or the federal government?
Well, ideally, I would like the government to be able to provide it, but based on the amount of corruption already in there, it would take a long time and a lot of work to decrease the corruption in order to be effective. So I think at least the quickest solution would be a third-party organization, but I hope that at least the third-party organization with the additional help would be able to allow the government to like work on itself and then thus create better laws for fixing this.
Okay. Very nice job.